everybody, I'm Gary McLean, and you're watching Talent Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Just a reminder that if you haven't done so already, please do go to the Talent Talk YouTube channel and subscribe today. As always, your support is always appreciated. Um, on that note, normally I would say, this is live and, if you have questions, ask, but that's not the case today. Today's a bit of a special episode. And today's guest, you probably know her best as Amy Fleming on the Canadian hit TV series Heartland. The series has been, has garnered around the world, really. Uh, you know, with it's really funny actually because I actually work with a lady who's from the Middle East, and much to my surprise, she was like, "Hey, I love this Heartland show, and we used to watch it all the time back home." I was like, and she said it's all over the place over there. So Heartland is a huge show worldwide. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Amy Fleming is. Um, and on that note, please join me in welcoming the person who plays Amy, Amber Marshall, and we can talk about her horses, Heartland, and other projects. Here we go. Hi, Amy.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. It's
Welcome.
a pleasure to talk about horses and anything else Heartland related.
Right? Absolutely. And speaking of, like I said, it's known worldwide, and it's been around. This will be the 15th season coming up, correct?
That is right. Yeah, we just aired our premiere of our 15th episode, or 15th season, and it just blows my mind that this show has been going year after year and it hasn't lost any momentum. Our fan base keeps growing. People keep enjoying the show. And like you said, from around the world, we air in 119 countries. And just to hear the feedback, because I'm very involved with social media, and to hear stories of families from around the world that have been watching Heartland for many years, or maybe just found it in the last year and have binge watched all previous seasons, is really cool to know that it doesn't matter where you grew up, where you lived, what your family dynamics like. Heartland has something for everyone. And it seems to resonate with people, not just in Canada or North America, but around the world.
And what's your opinion of what that element might be that can just draw everybody?
I believe that it is good, wholesome family entertainment, which is far and few between nowadays. It's something that you can sit down with your children, you can sit down with your grandparents and anyone in between and feel comfortable and feel good about watching the show. And I also think that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, how you grew up, what your family structure is like. We all share something. And that is a want for family, a want for that whole idea of community and coming together and being there and supportive for one another. And I think that really is something that it doesn't matter what your lifestyle's like. It doesn't matter if you grew up in the city or in the country or in Canada or in Europe or wherever you might be watching the show. That idea of those strong family values and connected community, I think that is just something that is wanted and valued all over the world.
I tend to agree with you. It's not something we see a lot nowadays. It seems more and more violence and things of that nature. So it is a nice change from all the other shows in that regard, for sure. You yourself actually started with the show when you were practically a kid yourself. And I'm kind of curious how you feel about having started so young, and did you foresee it being here this long and your growth with the project? Because you also became a producer at some point of the show as well, right? So I'm kind of curious.
I don't think anyone involved knew the longevity of the show and its beginning stages. And I was 18 years old when we filmed the pilot. So I was just on that transition of moving out from my parents' home. And this show gave me the opportunity to just leave the nest, so to speak. So in that first season was the first time that I was living by myself. The production rented me a a place in Calgary where I could stay and film the project. And it was the first time that I was away from everything that I knew. Born and raised in London, Ontario, I had never even been to Alberta prior to filming Heartland. So I came out here not really knowing the area, not knowing the people, and still being quite young, and just going, oh, wow, I think it's the same experience that a lot of 18-year-olds have when they go to school somewhere else and they're living in residency and they're kind of experiencing just a whole new community and sense of, this is totally outside of my comfort zone. But the thing that was so wonderful about it was instantly all of the people involved with Heartland became a family. And so it was like I was leaving everything I knew, but I came to this warm, welcoming, inviting group of people who instantly became my best friends, my family network. And so I think that's also what helped Heartland right from day one have a very real sense of family. A lot of people, when they first start watching the show, they think that we are a family, or they believe that we all knew each other really well before the show. All of us met on the set of Heartland. So we didn't know one another before, but we were all very open and grounded and welcoming. And I think that that really helped establish that Heartland family on screen as well as off screen, which allowed all of us to just dive into those characters and really capture that that family dynamic and what so many viewers have understood as something that they want, something that they look at and they say, that is a perfect example of a family that is united and comes together and sits at the dinner table each night and supports one another. And I think that a lot of it, yes, our writers do a fabulous job of creating those stories. But I think that involvement of each of us enjoying just being around one another really helped create that real atmosphere of a genuine family.
I can definitely attest or have a small taste of that, because my experience with it was 2011, which I think was probably season 4 of Heartland. Was my first experience on a set ever. I was doing background, obviously, and I was working directly with Sean Johnson, and he was just like the friendliest guy. Like, I felt completely at ease around him. He just started talking in between takes, and I was just like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. The one guy who's never done this before, scared out of his pants, and
Yeah.
and he was just very, like you said, it was just a very warming personality, and I think, like you said, I think that's what attracts people to it, right? Is
They feel
they
that.
can
They feel
sense
that
that.
through the screen. You know, it's
Yes,
not just acting. It's these personalities that come together and genuinely love one another. And I think that that resonates off screen. You know, people that are watching the show, they feel it. And it's about that whole mood of the show. And when you watch the show, you feel contentment, you feel inspired to go and have your family all sit down together and have dinner together and support one another and get off all the devices and come in and spend that time together as a family. And I've heard a lot of stories of people that the family was very fragmented. You know, everybody was off watching their own thing in their own separate room. Heartland comes on, they all get together, they sit down in the living room together. And that's the big thing about it all. It's like, in a world when it's so fast paced and everybody's kind of off on their own idea, I love that we're part of a show that can really bring people together. And I think that's the whole message of Heartland, but it's not just the message itself, it's actually happening. And people from around the world say that. They say this is the one time in the week when our whole family sits down together and does something as a family. And I'm so proud of being involved in something that can really do that and show that message to people all over the world.
I don't think there's a lot of actors that can claim they're in a show that does that, to be honest. So, no, that's great. And I kind of want to touch a little bit on, because of course, the whole story is based on kind of a ranch, small town community, or small community. And when it comes to the horses itself, you had experience well before the show, I think, that with horses themselves.
That's right. I've loved horses ever since I could walk and talk. I was 4 years old when I first started riding, and my mom was really involved with horses when she was younger. And so when I was 4, she leased a pony for me. I think because she missed it as well. She got out of horses when she was 20. And so she leased a pony for me, and we would go out to this farm every weekend, and I would go and ride. And then when I was 10, I was able to start taking it a little bit more seriously and competing a bit, and got my first horse. And I do believe that horses really shaped who I am today. I tell a lot of parents that when they say, "Oh, my daughter's been watching Heartland and now she wants us to get her a horse." And I always say, you don't have to go out and get a horse, but being involved with horses, I think, is so therapeutic for anyone, but especially teenagers when you're going through kind of a strange time in your life. You're trying to figure out who you are, who you want to be, who your friends are. And, there's a lot of instability, I think, in our lives as teenagers. And horses are that one constant that you can go out there and they're not going to judge you. They're not going to see you for someone different than you are. If you have a good heart and you're grounded, then a horse is going to be your best friend. And I think that a lot of teenagers and adults can really benefit from that. And also, if you're having a bad day and you go out and you hang out with a horse, it happens with a dog too. If you have a dog, you're having a bad day, you come home, your dog's wagging its tail and it's just so happy to see you. It makes you feel good. And I've always felt the same thing with horses. And so I'm a big advocate for any parent who is maybe on the fence about having their kids involved with horses. Yes, it can be dangerous and you do have to be careful. You can't just be running around. And I do definitely recommend that you get some formal training first before you just go out and buy a horse. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. But just having some involvement with them it's very beneficial to, I think, just the core and your values and everything that you might be uneasy about. It all just kind of washes away when you're around horses. And that's probably another reason that people love watching Heartland, because I think you feel some of those same effects when you're watching horses on TV. It's not like it would be me comparing, say you're watching a very dramatic CSI episode or something, and there's people getting stabbed and people running through back alleys. Your heart rate's going to be elevated and you're going to feel very tense and just not settled. But contrasting to that, when you're watching Heartland and you see a horse galloping through a grassy meadow in slow motion with music and beautiful mountains in the background, you can't help but feel at ease. You feel that grounding. You feel it doesn't matter if you love horses or you don't love horses. I feel like watching that it's good for your soul.
Right. And speaking of, while you're kind of chatting about that, I'm just going to pop this little one up here. And maybe you can tell us what's actually happening in this situation.
Yes. So this is a trained Liberty horse. So on Heartland, we have many different horses that come and do the episodes and play different characters on the show. In the very beginning premiere episode of season 15, we get to see my character and another character of Sylvie working with these two Liberty horses, one of which you just saw. And so working a horse at Liberty means that they have a bunch of different cues and commands that they understand without having any bits, bridles, saddle, tack, anything on them. So they're just loose typically. And they understand the body language. And I guess more importantly, humans understand which body language to present to them to get these different cues. So I've been very lucky to learn so much over the course of 15 years being on Heartland. But it was 10 years ago that we first introduced Liberty work. And I got to train with Nicole Flundra, who's out of Pincher Creek. And her trainer was Dan James, who is out of the States, originally from Australia. And these were his horses that we were able to use for this episode. So it was really cool for me because I had learned from Nikki, she had learned from Dan. And then in this episode, we brought Dan up from the States and his fabulous horses who are absolutely incredible. And I got to learn from him and just do these different routines. And a lot of people refer to it as dancing with horses. And it really does sort of feel like a dance because you have to be so in sync with them. And each little movement you make is a separate cue. So you have to know, okay, if I'm going to raise up my arm, I better be prepared for this horse to rear. Or if I'm going to tip my shoulder, I better be prepared for this horse to come right in next to me. So you have to be very aware. And as actors, I think we are aware in a scene what's going on because there's so much you have to think about, whether it be not just your lines, but the motivation for the scene, the other actors, the props that you're handling, if you're, on your mark or not on your mark. All of these different things come into play, and then add horses to it. And it's a whole nother element of being hyper aware of the situation, of everything that you're doing with your body language and the cues that you're giving this other actor in the scene, which is, a 1,200-pound animal. So I think that it's really inspiring for me to be on Heartland and to be able to see all of the possibilities that you can do with horses and to be able to learn that and work with them. And I've just had so much fun over the years. And this specific episode was very rewarding after all of the things that I've learned, and to be able to do this with these horses that have traveled North America to perform and to do different Liberty acts it's really cool.
And just out of curiosity, I'm going to pop up another one here. Is this part of the same group, or is this?
It's the same episode. So this is a horse that we've come to know as Shadow. And in the story, Amy and her family, they kind of adopt this herd of wild horses and look after them. And Amy realizes that with wild horses, they're continually breeding. And so you've got all of these new horses that might not be accepted into the herd, or the population might get too big and they'll be overgrazing the land. And so she decides to start taming and working with some of these young horses. So we get to see 2 seasons ago, Amy gentles this wild horse and names him Shadow. And so that's kind of become her new riding horse go-to, because her older horse, Spartan, who fans know and love, is just getting up there in age. And in real life, that horse who plays Spartan is 20. And so he's starting to develop some arthritis and things. So we wanted to take the pressure off him in real life. And I thought, what better idea than to create that story on screen? Because it's happening in real life. So why not tell that story with the character and say, you can't do as many things as you used to be able to do. This is an aging horse. We have to respect his limitations. And so bring in a new horse that you can do most of the things that you like to do with. And then you have Spartan, who he's very much a part of Amy's life, but she doesn't use him for all the things that she used to.
Right. And how much, do you spend a lot of time with the horses before you even put them on set, or I'm just wondering what the...
For me, so all of these horses that we use on Heartland are very, very well trained for film and television work. So we don't have horses that we just go out and find online and bring on set and say, let's see how you do today. These are horses that are all owned by primarily one person who has exposed them to everything on the film and television sets prior to them coming to be a cast horse or to be a character horse. So behind the scenes, each episode of Heartland, we've got a team of wranglers who they will bring different horses on in the background, and they'll just gauge their reaction. And they'll say, okay, so did this horse freak out when they put up this big light, or did it not like this sound, or was it claustrophobic with all the people around? Because that's the thing too. And you being on a set yourself, you would know there's a lot of people involved that we don't ever see or even think of when we're watching the episode. So, you might be watching the episode and it's just 2 people, 2 actors talking. Well, around them is a team of 50 to 70 people that are standing right close to those actors, with the camera, with the lighting, with the sound, everything that is involved in making these episodes what we see on TV. So for a horse, that can be a very scary thing, because they're a prey animal. They're ready. It's fight or flight, right? They are a flight animal. They're going to take off if they feel threatened. So when a horse comes on set and there's a huge group of people, that can be very intimidating. So our wranglers bring on different horses onto set all the time, and they just gauge their reaction. And if they pass several tests and several days of being on set, then they can upgrade them or move them up to being a cast horse. And so to ask about my involvement, it really depends on what's needed for the scene and what the specific horse action is. So the character of Spartan, who has been played by the same horse for many, many years, since the beginning, actually, him and I know each other so well just from all of the time we've spent together on set. We've been working together for 15 years. So I know that I can always rely on him. If I have an emotional scene or a heavy scene, he's always just so gentle, calm, quiet. And I know ahead of time that it's going to go really well because I've spent so much time with him. If we have a horse that comes in where I have to do something specific, like roping or liberty or something that's very, you need to be on the same page with that horse, and you need to understand how that horse takes that situation or knows the cues, that kind of thing, then I'll go ahead of time and I'll train, even just if it's for an afternoon, and go out and get to know that animal before we come on set, because you never want to be trying to get with a horse and understanding their cues and what makes them tick when the cameras are rolling, because time is money. And I want to make sure that when I show up on set, everything's been rehearsed ahead of time. So for these Liberty horses that you saw the picture of previously with that yellow horse doing a rear, beautiful Palomino. Yes. So I met with Dan and his team of horses ahead of time, and we worked everything out, and we got this nice sort of presentation put together so that we knew on the day when we were filming, we could just show up and do it. And it wasn't me going, how do I make him do this? How do I do this? Is he going to listen to me if I do this? And so I think that it really works in our favor to be able to have the time to get together with these horses and trainers beforehand as well.
Well, and I mean, I'll be honest, my knowledge of horses is extremely limited. But the one thing I have always heard is that the bond between a horse and yourself, for example, can be as strong as that of a dog as well, right? In that, you know, they're very loyal, and once they're really comfortable with you, they're good to go for the most part. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but
it is for sure. And horses really, they always say an elephant never forgets, but horses too, they have such a great memory for people, for places, for situations. So that's why sometimes when a horse has a bad experience, it's really, really hard to get them over that, because every time they enter into that space or that situation that happened before, they're going to freak right out. They're going to say, no, I know what happened here before. This is not what I want to do. It's sort of like taking your dog to the vet. You know, as soon as they get in that waiting room, they're just trembling because they're like, I know what happens here. And I think that with horses, and I found this with my own horses, when they're together and they form that bond, when you take them apart, they miss that other horse, or they might miss that other person, or whoever's in their life. And I've seen this. I've had horses that I have sold or given to friends, and I'll meet back up at an event, and my one horse will be on one end of the fairgrounds, let's say, and the horse that I had sold is on the other end. And my horse will let out a whinny, a call, and you will hear that other horse. There will be hundreds of horses there, but you will hear that one horse answer, because they speak each other's language and they understand each specific call and voice and sound. And so that's always really cool to me. Is I remember this one time I hadn't had a certain horse on my property for 4 years, and I took a horse to this event, and my horse called out and the other horse answered, and I knew it was that horse, and no other horse said a thing. There was nobody that made a noise. And it's just really cool to me that they understand so well that dynamic. And when you look at the herd structure of horses in the wild and back to kind of where they came from, they need that to be able to stay safe. They need to know who's in their herd. They need to know where they are. They need to be able to have that connection so that they can know where the water sources are, where the best food is. And that's passed down from, you know, each generation of horse. And so when we're working with them, all of those same rules apply. And to always make sure that you do things to set up for success is really the whole key of it. Because if a horse comes on Heartland and we scare them, or something happens and they don't feel comfortable. Well, they're not going to feel comfortable again. So, and it's going to take a really long time to gain that trust back. So that's why I think that we've learned so much also filming with horses. And I've learned so much. I've been around horses most of my life, but it's a whole different thing when you're working with them on screen, because you have to ask them to do things that might be not in their normal range of what they would be doing. And we also do things repetitively. So when we're filming a scene, you know, we're asking a horse to do the same thing 20 times in a row. After a while, they're going to say, wait a minute, it did it right the first time. Why are we doing it 10, 15 more times? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And so you really understand which horses just enjoy the process. And I think that's why Stormy, who's played Spartan for so long, he just understands what we do. And he knows, okay, so I did it this one time, I'm going to have to come in and do it the same time a bunch of times after this. And he's fine with that. But some horses, they just get impatient and they say, this doesn't make sense, guys. Let's do something else now.
Which, you know, some of us humans do that too, right?
That's true.
You mentioned that you've got your own horses on your own ranch. Do any of the, or have you had any of those horses on set?
So as I was talking about before, with the whole process that is involved with having horses on set, I haven't been able to have any of my own horses because I don't really have the resources of people to take them on and the wranglers to have them on day after day to get them used to this. So 95% of all the horses that we use on Heartland come from one guy, and he just has a ranch full of horses that his wranglers come out, ride every day, take onto film and television sets, make sure that they understand and that they're comfortable. And so as much as I would love to have my own horses on the show with me, it's not really possible with how it's all structured and set up. But I do have a little miniature horse. He's just tiny, and he's been on the show because the gentleman who owns all the other horses that we use, he doesn't have any miniature horses. So when the role came up, I said, well, I've got one that's pretty quiet and I think he'll be okay. And the fact that he was small, they weren't really too concerned if he did have a little bit of a freak out on set. So they let me bring him on for the role of Monty. So his name's Talon and he's on my farm, and he does come on Heartland on occasion.
Okay. No, that's very cool though. Because I thought there would also be like that comfort level, of course, with you and your horses. But yeah, I totally get it with, like you said, the sets, setups and noises and all that other stuff, right? Yeah. Makes sense. I just wasn't sure if you had capability to do that setup and training, I guess. You know what? I spent a lot of time on the horses, which for me is cool because I'm learning. So
yeah, that's good.
so thank you for that.
Really, Heartland wouldn't be what it is without horses. So I feel like we owe it to the horse to talk a little bit about the backstory of that as well.
Right? Absolutely. I mean, they're on set and on screen just as much as anybody else, really. I do want to go back a little bit to the development of your character from the very beginning to now. Like, Amy has grown leaps and bounds from when she was first on set to today. Can you maybe talk us a little bit about that process and how that transitioned for you?
I think one of the coolest things about being on a show for the longevity of 15 years, you know, even a decade, you're allowed to have your character grow and to mature, especially when, for me, you know, I was 18 years old when the show first started. And I personally feel like your 20s are when you do the most growth in your life. That's when you really understand who you are, who you want to be, who you want to hang out with, where you want to live. And I mean, we're kind of going through this our whole lives. I don't think you're ever fully settled on what it is you want to do and where you want to be. And but in your 20s is really when you establish all of your core values and who you're going to be and what you want to do. And so to be able to be working and be on a show through, I think, was a really cool experience, because not only was I going through things in my own personal life, my character was going through those things too, because that was just the time frame of the character development. So we saw in the first episode of Heartland ever, there was the death of my character's mother, which is a very heavy place to start. And my character was 16 at the time, I believe. And so we got to see this teenager who has just gone through a very traumatic experience, and she's just at the point in her life where she's going to fall in love for the first time. She's going to go through so many changes, and we get to see all of that on camera. Which, if my character, let's say we had have picked up Heartland and Amy was 40, and that's where we started the show, it would be an entirely different journey for my character, because all of those fundamentals of learning and falling in love and moving out from home and all of those things would have been done in the past. So starting a character at the age of 40 as opposed to 16, just right there, it starts with a whole different pattern of stories and a whole new arc of stories. So I think that I was really lucky to be able to dive into this character in her youth, so that I could go through all of that with her, you know, falling in love for the first time, getting engaged, getting married, moving out from her home, then moving back into her home, and then all of those things that happen in real life that I got to experience through that character. And I think that's really what makes that character interesting to portray, is that there's so much going on. And it's not just a character that's, okay, I'm happy, I have my house, I have my job, I have, you know, it's something that we get to see, and we get to, as viewers, experience with that character over time and see the evolution of a character changing and being shaped in different ways. And seeing that family structure and how much the family around the character and the friends that are there really help create that path and that journey. And we've gotten to see so many opportunities for Amy, whether she travels to France or she gets offered to travel with the Dark Horse Liberty Performing Horses Act, all of these things that she has to make that decision, and that decision will shape her future. And the audience gets to be there for all of that. So as an actor playing that role, I think that that's been the most rewarding, is that I get to experience so much with that character. And it's been an incredible ride. And I'm just so fortunate to be able to be playing this role that I love so much, and that is so similar to my life as well.
That leads right into my next question, actually. So great. I'm kind of curious about the parallel growth of Amy and Amber, and I guess your how shall I say, the thoughts from your parents' point of view on watching your growth for both aspects. Like, I'm assuming I'm assuming they're probably pretty proud parents at this point, but at the same time, like, were they kind of fairly involved with the growth of both you and the character? Or
I think once you're 18, or at least for me, you decide that you're going to start to make your own decisions. And that was kind of the big thing for me, is that my parents have been very supportive ever since I was a child of what I do and what I want to do, and whether it be acting or whatever. And, but I think when you're 18, there's something inside you that's like, I'm going to be independent, and I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to make my own choices. And so when I first got the show, they were extremely happy for me. And then I loved Alberta so much, and I come from London, Ontario. And so I think that there was that moment as parents when you go, I'm really happy and I'm really supportive of my child, but now she's moving across the country and she's just outside of any type of family involvement, right? Because I was flying back and forth in the beginning. So I was getting home to see my parents at least once a month, maybe once every 2 months. But going from living at home full time and being home all the time to living across the country where I might only see my parents once every 2 months, I think that was a big shock for them. For me, I was so excited to have that independence. I was like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm leaving the nest, and I'm kind of creating my whole new life. And it wasn't soon after I moved out to Alberta for the show that I decided I wanted to live here full time. And as soon as I made that decision, I think they went, uh-oh, are we going to see her again? So it's bittersweet, right? I have a great relationship with my parents, and I see them as often as I can. But I think there was that moment when they knew that they'd lost me to the West and that I probably wasn't coming back anytime soon. And so I just feel so comfortable in Alberta. I love this place. I love the people. I've made so many lifelong friendships. And my husband, who is originally from Ontario, he loves it out here. We've been living out here together for 10 years. So I don't ever see us moving back. But yeah, it's definitely, I think that Heartland came right at that moment in my life when it was sort of when everybody is trying to make that decision of what next and where to go, whether it be go to university or go get a job or go. And I was working part-time in a vet clinic when I got the role. So that was kind of my day to day was I would go there, I would work with the animals, and then I was doing acting on the side. And that's when that shift came. It was all of a sudden like, okay, now this is a full-time gig for me. And I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more suiting job. I was wanting to work with animals. I loved acting. And then all of a sudden the two got smashed together in this incredible role. So I mean, I think that everything fell into place exactly where it was supposed to. And I'm so fortunate for this experience and the people that have supported me and just, I don't know. I love Heartland. What can I say?
As do many people. I definitely want to touch back on the veterinary assistant portion, but before we get to that, I just wanted to say that I was born and raised in Calgary, but I moved to Ontario for about 3 years, not too far from London, actually, a little town called Norwich. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not, just south of Woodstock. But kind of like what you said, I never knew what I had until I lost it. Once we moved to Ontario, I was like, oh, I need to go back. I really like it there. So we ended up moving back right after 3 or 4 years. But yeah, there's just something about this place. I mean, you've got the mountains right there. They're nice and close. Tons, especially for somebody like yourself, where you've got horses, you can take them on trails, things like that. Like there's a lot of opportunity for that kind of stuff here. Yeah. Anyway, that was my little blurb on that. And yeah, so going back to your veterinary assistant job, first off, how long were you doing that before you kind of got the full-time work?
Well, I was there 5 years. So I started, I always, from a little kid, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. And so when I was 10, I started volunteering at animal shelters and horse camps and things that would kind of help that dream come to fruition. I was like, I'm going to get the most experience that I can working with animals so that I can make that dream come true. I was never a very academic person. My grades in biology and chemistry and all the things that I needed to be a vet were never very high. And it's not from a lack of trying. I tried so hard. I would study so hard and I was very involved, and my brain just doesn't function like that. I was very good in English and drama and creative writing, and that side of my brain was really what excelled when I put all the pieces together. But mathematics, all of that, no go. So I started at 14, I started working in a vet clinic because I thought, is this something that I do want to do? If I think that I want to be a vet, I better start working there and understanding what is involved in this whole idea. Because it's one thing to have a dream and to say, I'm going to do this. But if you don't have any experience in that, how do you know that's what you really want? So I was very lucky. My parents were so supportive in that and were like, if this is what you want to do, you should get as much hands-on experience now as you can before you go into school, before you decide, okay, I'm going to dedicate the next 10 years of my life to schooling for this. What if it's not really what you think it is? So I started working in the vet clinic after school when I was 14, and I was lucky that I was able to get a job in a clinic that was right close to my school. So school would end, I would walk over to the clinic. I started just by doing, the regular tasks like cleaning the kennels and walking the dogs and switching out bandages, stuff like that. And then over time, they gave me more and more responsibility. And then I moved up to reception, and then I moved up to assisting. I got to be in lots of different surgeries. I got to be in the exam rooms, helping restrain, helping pull blood, like all of these things that I think really gave me an excellent understanding of what it took and what it was to be a vet. And so I loved it. There's no doubt about it. I loved all of the experience I got there. But I also realized it's not really just about helping animals, which is what I always thought being a vet was. It's really being that mitigator between owners and their pets and helping them understand what might be best and showing them options. And to me, that part of the job wasn't what I wanted to sign up for. I didn't want to be there just to tell owners their options and then them to choose, right? Like I just wanted to help animals. And so I learned very quickly that there's a fine line of customer service involved with being a vet, and that you can't always choose your outcome. You know, you might know exactly what's right for an animal, but the owner doesn't want to do it, and there's nothing you can do. And there were certain cases where owners would surrender animals to the vet clinic if they didn't feel like they could afford to properly care for them, or whatever the reason might be. And then we would be able to take them on and get them the care they needed, or find them a new family that could be there and support them. But that's where I was kind of waffling. I was like, okay, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. And while all that was going on, I was still auditioning for projects out of Toronto, because ever since I was 8, I was involved in theater and then film and television. And I had done several projects before then. And so I was still auditioning. I would drive down, and from London, I gave myself 3 hours to get there. And then, so let's say 6 hours of driving for a 5-minute audition. It takes a lot of determination. And I was going down and doing all these auditions and just hoping and praying I would get something. And that's when Heartland came along. And Heartland, they had gone through the process of auditioning. They couldn't find anyone. I had not auditioned initially. And then I decided, my agent called me and said, hey, you know, they're looking for this person. I think you'd be perfect because it involves horses. And I had 2 horses at the time. And so I put an audition on tape just at home. I sent it in, and I got the role off one audition on tape. And that was almost unheard of at that time, especially for a series lead. And so I was like, wow, they obviously saw something, and they just needed to find someone ASAP, because they started shooting in just a few days. And so I flew out from London. I went to Calgary. We filmed the pilot. And when you film a pilot episode, which is just one episode, you never know what's going to happen. You know, somebody might pick it up. Somebody may never want to do anything with it. So I had a great experience. I filmed the pilot. Then I went back to work at the vet clinic thinking, well, I don't know. I mean, that was fun, but I don't know if I'll ever see anything from it. And when I got the call that it was picked up for a series, I said, oh, this is really cool. I had a great experience, and I get to go back and I get to experience more. So I was very lucky to have lots of supportive people in my life at that time too, including my boss at the vet clinic, who was very, very adaptable when I said, okay, I've got an audition tomorrow, so I can't come in. And she would just say, okay, that's fine. Like, good luck. And so I was very lucky to have a great team of people around me. And that's kind of how I ended up where I am today.
Excellent. You know what? We're kind of hitting up on that hour. So I would like to actually show the trailer as well. So we'll show that real quick, and then maybe you can just give a little blurb of when some of the next episodes might be coming up for folks to check out.
Sounds good.
All right, let's check out this trailer.
Slow back to the light, coming out of the dark. I can tell we're truly gonna be alright. The air is clean on my new skin, breathing in my heart remembers we can always begin again.
Why didn't he ask me what I wanted?
We're not always the best versions of ourselves at times like this. Often we're the very worst.
Is this the man in the mood?
No, that's Dada. That's where he said he'll be.
I am in this moment.
Stay in the car with the girls. You know that feeling that you can't even be safe in your own home? I haven't felt that way since June died.
He doesn't see me.
Help!
I need a time out.
Why Let's play hide and seek together.
Grandpa, he's not leaving.
Years clean on my new skin.
Mommy, did you like the surprise?
I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was a dream. Oh, sorry. Technical. I can't hear you.
You know what? That's because I muted myself. There we go. Yeah, no, that was great, by the way. What I was saying was, are you guys wrapped now, or is there still some filming left to do? You are wrapped. Okay.
No, we wrapped up at the end of September. Our production schedule usually runs spring to fall. And then last year when we were shooting season 14, it got pushed because of COVID, because we were supposed to start up in April, May of 2020. And that didn't happen. So it got pushed until September when we were able to start airing a little bit later. So season 14 aired in the new year of 2021, and season 15 aired in the fall of 2021. So it's the first year ever that we've had 2 seasons airing in the same year, which is kind of cool. And fans didn't have to wait all that long between the 2 seasons.
Yeah, well, and the lady I was talking about that I know at work, that's one of the questions she wanted me to ask you. Is like, when's the next episode coming out? That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So season 15 started airing last Sunday. And so it's on CBC every Sunday at 7. And it's also on CBC Gem, which is their streaming app, which is free to anyone who has a smartphone or computer or device. So if you don't have cable, you don't have CBC, that's fine. You can still watch Heartland, and you can watch all the previous episodes as well as the current episodes. The same time that they're airing on CBC, they'll be available on the app.
And on CBC Gem, is it still released weekly, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you never know with the streaming services, right? Sometimes they throw them all at once, but honestly, it's funny because we were just having this conversation with a couple other folks where, especially with the IATSE strike that was pending here recently, in that there's such a push to just put out product because we're all just, binge watching everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
I think that's why a lot of people have found Heartland in the last 2 years. And I have a lot of new fans that say, I never knew about this show, but I've been in my home for the last 2 years and didn't know what to do. So I've been just scrolling different things on Netflix and came across Heartland and saw, wow, there's 14 seasons available. And so they were like, this will be great because it'll give us something to watch long term. That's not just 10 episodes and then it's done. So I think a lot of people have started watching the show start to finish within these last 2 years, which is a whole new experience for me because 15 years of my life has been doing this show. And so viewers that watch it in a shorter timeline get to see all of us grow up on the show within a matter of a short period of time. Whereas those who have started watching the show when it first aired 15 years ago, they kind of are on the same timeline as we were. So they see the first season, okay, and then a year later, they see the next season. And with Netflix and all these streaming services, all of a sudden, all 14 seasons are available right now. So it's a very different experience than it was 10 years ago even.
Yeah. And honestly, I think there is something to be said nowadays for actually having that weekly show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure, it annoys people that they have to wait a week, but at least you've got something to look forward to instead of just finishing it in the weekend and going, okay, now what?
What next? Yeah. No, that is very true.
You know what? On that note, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me and chat about Heartland and horses. That
Of
was great.
course.
And wish you best of luck. Do you know if there's a 16th season yet?
We don't, but we're very hopeful. And as long as people keep loving the show, we all continue to love being a part of it. So I hope that this show goes many more years. And although we don't know for sure, I'm happy to keep telling stories as long as everyone's happy to keep watching them.
Absolutely. And with 119 different countries watching, I mean, hopefully the chances are good.
Yeah.
So thanks again, and I'll let you get off to your whatever you've got going on next. And thanks again for spending the time with me.
Perfect. Well, take care. And don't forget, new season's on Sunday at 7.
Thank you very much.